Hi, how are you? Okay, so I did my lesson plan today with my class, and as you know, I'm not allowed to record in there, so I'm just gonna kind of go through everything that we did today and give you the best idea that I can of how everything went. So last week there was a hurricane, and so the kids were out of school on Thursday and Friday, which was one of the days that I was supposed to be doing this lesson plan. That being said, the original A CVC word song, we ended up changing it to the I CVC one just because the lesson plan did end up happening a little bit later than planned. So the lesson started with all of the kids on their little squares on their carpet spaces, and so I kind of explained how the dance would work before the song got started, and then the song played and we did our dance moves. So even if the letters weren't familiar to them and we hadn't explicitly reviewed that letter, their goal was just to be listening to those letter sounds. So in the song, he sings the word dig, and he goes d, I, g. And so for their dance moves, I don't know if you're able to see me, I'll squat down a little bit so you can see the whole thing. And so for their dance moves, I had them use their arm movement. So instead of doing a finger pointing, I ended up doing kind of big arm movements. So it was d, I, g. And then when he says dig, we went. So we did that for the whole song. They got the hang of it pretty easily and pretty quickly, and I did a quick little formative assessment afterwards to see how they liked it, and everyone said that they really liked it, and they all did a really great job with it and listening to those different word parts, which is really nice. And then after we did the song, they were already kind of at their tables, at their carpet spaces. So had them just sit back down with the little squares, crisscross applesauce facing the front. And I went through some stuff that I brought from home. So this was the bag of things that I brought. And it's a gigantic bag, but the reason I picked it was because it has the Nike symbol on it. And so I started by asking if anyone recognized the symbol. And I had a little boy who raised his hand, and he's like, "That's Nike." It's like, "Yes, that is Nike." And so I went through the different items in the bag, and so we started with, that was not in there, we'll get to that in a minute. So we started with these, and I was like, "Does anyone know what these are?" Everyone raised their hands, and we found out they are napkins. And then had this, nope, not that bag. Had this little bag, and so they would know what these are. And I got a lot of answers like mac and cheese and spaghetti. It's like, all right, now I'm gonna think of another word. If this one starts with that sound, can anyone tell me what this might be? And someone finally got it. It's like noodles. I was like, yes, they're noodles. Great job. I was like, and I got something else in this bag too. And I pulled it out kind of slow like this. I was like, I wonder what this is. And so I made this. It was really fun. And so I wore this for the rest of the lesson and asked what it was. And a little girl said, "It's a noodle necklace." Yes, it is a noodle necklace. And there's a couple other little things in here that we did. So we had like a notebook, and then, oh goodness. And then we had a novel by Naomi Novik. And none of them knew the word novel. I didn't expect them to, but it was a learning experience. I think there was a nickel in here too, and so that was a fun one. And then I ended it with, okay, and I got one more thing in this bag. And I pulled it out, and I pretended I was like, it's so heavy. And there was absolutely nothing in my hand. And one little girl was like, "There's nothing there." I was like, "That's right, there's nothing." And so that's how we concluded that little section. And then what did we do? And then after we did that, we got set up for our game. So in my lesson plan, I said that we were gonna do 3 groups of 6 for space purposes, and then also just keeping everyone kind of organized. We ended up just doing the 2 groups. So I conferred with my interning teacher as well on the reading levels of the different students, and so we separated them into 2 groups based on those reading levels. And the higher level readers, I put some still simple words, no more than 4 letters, but I did put some slightly more difficult words that I think that they would have had an easier time with. Okay, wait, so here's the game. There's 3 buckets here. We only needed 2 though. So here's the game that I made. So this is the little buckets. We have group 1 and group 2, and I'll show you the best I can. So in the bucket, these all turned over. In the bucket is a bunch of potatoes, and I asked the kids, I was like, has anyone ever played the game hot potato before? Some of them had, some of them hadn't, so I went ahead and I explained the rules to them, and I tried to be as clear as possible. You know, when you're passing around the bucket, make sure you're holding up 2 hands, and then once the bucket, goodness gracious, I explained it better to them. So the music's gonna be playing, and the song that I played in the background was the letter N song from ABC Mouse. And as the song was playing, they were to pass around the bucket, and as soon as the music stopped, whoever had the bucket in their hand stopped, and then they had to pick a potato out of the bucket. So I'll show you the best I can. So these are all the little potatoes that I made in here. And then on the back of all these little potatoes, we've got words. So you've got, you know, naps and packed, pan, and just full of potatoes in here. I will say this part of the lesson, this little guided practice game, was the most difficult part. Not because the lesson itself was difficult, but because the game was fun. And so behavior management during that little portion was a little bit more difficult. We did have to stop the game a couple times so I could be like, hey, okay, so if I'm passing the bucket over to Camden, am I gonna throw the bucket at Camden? Am I gonna take the bucket and am I gonna toss it at his face? No, we're gonna take our 2 hands and we're gonna pass it. So that was definitely a more challenging bit for me, but we did get through it, and towards the end, there was still 1 or 2 kids who hadn't had a chance to read a word. So I asked, you know, has anyone not had a chance to read a word yet? And those kids did get the chance to go ahead and read their word. Also, a good thing about having the 2 groups instead of the 3 groups was I was kind of working with one group, and then Miss Butner, which is my interning teacher, she was working with the other group. So when a kid was reading a word, if they had trouble sounding out any sounds or if they needed any help, we were kind of there to help guide them, and that was a nice little addition. I'm gonna reference my notes really fast. Oh goodness, okay, so something I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. I was asking questions throughout the different parts of the lesson as well. So after we listened to the song, we did our little dance, I asked them, you know, how can you describe the dance that we just did? And their answers were like, oh, well, we did this with our arms when the word was said. I was like, yeah, that's great. And I explained to them, yeah, and just remember, we're moving our arms with each of those different sounds of the letters. And then, so at the end of, sorry, I'm just backtracking here. At the end of the little show and tell area as well, I asked the class, why do you think that I chose those items? And none of them really got where I was trying to go with it. The answers were mostly, oh, well, you picked the noodles because you like to eat them. And, oh, you picked a notebook so you can write stuff down. I was like, yeah, those are great answers. I was like, but also, you know, all of these letters, or all of these words start with the letter N. I think you guys learned a little bit about the letter N last year with Miss Butner. Some of them were like, no. Some of them were like, yeah. It's like, okay. Okay, it cut out a little bit, I'm sorry. You're gonna draw a picture, telling you starting with the letter I, anything that you want. So they went ahead, they flipped it over, and they drew some pictures. And I was walking around, you know, helping them write the letter I's as they were doing it. And then when they got to the pictures on the back, some of them drew ice cubes, some of them drew igloos, and there was ice cream cones and iguanas and lots of really just fun pictures. And when they were done with that, I had them go ahead and hold up their worksheets so I could go around and collect them. And I also should have mentioned, I'm sorry, as before they started doing their independent practice and after I modeled the letter I up here, I also took this paper and took the projector, and that's why you see it written in here. And then I went ahead and modeled it a couple times on the worksheet as well. Back to where I was. So after they drew their pictures, I randomly just went through the pile and I closed my eyes and I grabbed a couple pictures out of there and I showed them on the projector. And again, I was trying to do my best with behavior management. It's still kind of new to me, but Ms. Butner has been a very good example for that kind of stuff. So I made sure to mention, okay, so I'm going to put this picture up on the projector here, but if it's your picture, we're not going to yell out, ooh, 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 that's mine. We're going to look at these pictures and we're going to try to figure out what I words they could be. So I showed about 3 pictures all together, and the first one, it was a little bit messy. I was like, what do you guys think this could be? And it was an iguana. Someone was like, dinosaur. I was like, all right, dinosaur, that's a good guess, but we're going to try to think of a word that starts with an I, and then little girl, she was like, iguana. It's like, yes, it's an iguana. Great job. And so that was also part of my differentiation where the kids were able to kind of see what each other did and able to really visually represent the letter I as well. I do also want to make a comment with my game. So the game did focus on those A CBC words, and the I CBC words were the focus of the song, which doesn't seem like it makes sense. I did that kind of on purpose because those A CBC words were kind of focused on them remembering the sound of the letter N and how those work together. The letter I and ICBC words are very, very new to them. So that's why we use the ICBC as kind of a warm-up to get them thinking about CBC words in general. And that's why they're learning how to write the letter I and why it wasn't the huge focus of the lesson. Because it's all very, very new concepts to them, like brand new. A lot of them are still pronouncing the letter I like the letter A. And so this was just kind of a toe dip into the letter I, and then I was really just knocking home the knowledge from the letter N that they should have learned a few days ago. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Yes, so after I went ahead and showed the pictures, we did a little closure, and I asked the class, what do you remember about what we did today? And I got some answers like, oh, well, we did this dance with the letters, and then we did this. And, oh, well, we drew pictures with the letter I. And this little girl was like, you wore a noodle necklace. And I think that's about all we did. There was a pretty cute little chant that I came up with for the letter N that I wrote in my lesson plan. We did not do that because we didn't do the letter N. And then I was talking to my interning teacher, and she also said that the chants and the rhymes, they usually just stick to numbers with that. And then as far as letters go, they try to do a like a practice handwriting thing with the example that she has on the board. I believe that's everything that we went over in the lesson. I will say also that I was surprised that my lesson did take about as long as I was expecting. I was expecting everything to take about an hour altogether, and then it took about an hour and 15 to an hour and 20 minutes. So it went a little bit over, but considering how many corrections I had to do with behavior during the game and just kind of like little stuff here and there, I think that timing-wise it did go well. I believe that is everything. It is possible I'm forgetting something because it was a long lesson and I'm trying to just explain everything. But if I do have any more comments, or if you have any comments or questions, feel free to let me know. And if I think of anything else that I'm forgetting, I will add it into the caption with this video. Alrighty, well, thank you so much and have a nice day.